Harsh Winter is a somewhat infuriating prophecy from Dominion Rising Sun. When you gain a card on your turn, if there's dead on its pile, take it. Otherwise, put 2 in its pile. This is probably the strongest activator effect because there's going to be no debt most of the time on any of the piles, and then you can activate it on your turn, gain 1 or 2 things from different piles. Now your opponent has to take on the debt. Kind of like tax, there's an advantage to being the player to activate it. So I think that's something that can be really powerful because the difference between that sort of 2 or 4 debt that your opponent has to take on to continue building their engine is really quite large in a close game of Dominion. Double gainers like Experiment and Slay go way down in value because when you gain the first experiment, it puts 2 dead in the experiment pile, and then you gain the second one. And the wording of Harsh Winter is not buy it, it's gain it. So that's worth noting. With tax, I believe you have to actually buy it. Debt can even be put on non-kingdom piles like horses and loot. That is very not obvious from the card text, but I quickly discovered that when playing with horses, when playing with loot. Um, Often you end up building a diverse engine. So sometimes with engine building, you just grab sort of village, smithy, market, and you're happy with those 3 cards and maybe a couple golds. But with this, you might want to grab lesser pieces that don't have debt on them. So maybe you grab some poachers, maybe you grab some laboratories, etc. That aren't necessarily the best piece for your engine, but don't have any debt on them, and they do a better job than the pile that they do a good job, as good a job as the pile that has debt on it when you account for the debt. You can also avoid pieces that your opponent needs. If you know your opponent really wants to add villages to their deck, and maybe you've got 3 villages and they only have 2, instead of buying the 4th village, you can just leave it there and make your opponent take on that debt. One of the things your opponent then may try to do is gain 2 villages in a turn, so they end up with a 4-3 lead in the villages, and there's still debt on the pile. But in some kingdoms, that's not going to be possible. It also makes ending the game on double province quite a bit harder in some cases. So if there's 2 debt on the province pile, then you have to take the debt. So that's just something to watch out for. Actually, gaining the first province, so there's always going to be debt on the province pile in general when there's an odd number of provinces. So yeah, if you buy the second to last province, then there'll be 2 debt on there. So you'd actually need 18 to pile out instead of 16. So make sure you've done the math correctly. Otherwise, you'll have 16 or 17 money, buy that province, and realize all of a sudden that you don't actually have the pile out that you thought you did.